All right. So, um, in case you didn't think that there was enough horribleness happening, I just got this article. Just prepare for next. All right. Oh, where'd it go? All right. Trump and Moms for Liberty opened snitch line to report on pro LGBTQ plus schools. Yeah, there couldn't possibly be anything wrong with a snitch line. No, let's just, snitch on people who actually possess empathy for others. I mean, why would we want to promote empathy? All right. The Trump administration's weaponization of the education department continued apace on Thursday with the debut of what some are calling a snitch line, a website inviting parents, students, and school staff to report illegal discriminatory practices at institutions of learning. Because there was absolutely no way to report illegal activity before this. But we know what they mean. The Department of Education, or DOE, will utilize community submissions to identify potential areas for investigation, the department notes. The website was introduced in a press release by Moms for Liberty, the group behind efforts to purge LGBTQ plus content from school libraries and apparently a new partner in the DOE's crackdown on school systems not falling in line with Trump's DEI and gender ideology executive diktats. For years, parents have been begging schools to focus on teaching their kids practical skills like reading, writing, and math, instead of pushing critical theory. What the hell is that? Rogue sex education and divisive ideologies. Rogue sex education? What exactly is rogue sex education? And divisive ideologies? That's a you problem right there. But their concerns have been brushed off, mocked, or shut down entirely, said Tiffany Justice. Oh, the irony of that last name. A co-founder of the group, which has been labeled as an anti-LGBTQ plus extremist group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Parents, now is the time that you share the receipts of the betrayal that has happened in our public schools. This webpage demonstrates that President Trump's Department of Education is putting power back in the hands of parents, Justice added. It's funny. They keep screaming all about parents' rights and how nobody's listening to the parents. But these people don't listen to the parents who actually, treat their kids with kindness and accept that their kids could be part of the LGBT plus community and want to actually give them a nurturing environment, not force their kids to look and act the way their parents think they should. So, yeah, I call bullshit on this parents' right narrative, and I have been for a while because, again, if this was about parents' rights, then you would accept that not all parents think like you. Ironically, Moms for Liberty, a group that has advocated for local control over schools, is now complicit in handing that power to the federal government. Oh, when it comes to Moms for Liberty and groups like that, irony is totally dead. Critics were aghast at the call for colleagues and kids to anonymously rat out anyone not falling in line with the right-wing ideology Trump is imposing from Washington. And as well as they should, because what the hell? I mean, if you have a problem with something that's being taught in your school, you have school boards. You have ways to make your voice heard. You do not have to rat out perfectly innocent people to the fucking Gestapo simply because you don't like something. And the fact that you're a minority and that you didn't get your way is not an excuse to, again, call the fucking Gestapo. I believe Hitler had a program like this, wrote Michael E. Mann, a scientist, author, and director of the Penn Center for Science, Sustainability, and the Media. What, you mean Hitler is acting like Hitler? Shocking. Trump Education Department opened snitch line to rat out diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts at local public schools, wrote Gabe Ortiz, an editor at America's Voice who focuses on immigration, LGBTQ+, and Latino issues. The fact that Trump's bigoted, extremist effort to end diversity, inclusion, and equity in schools uses Moms for Liberty as its only validation tells you everything you need to know. The same Moms for Liberty that approvingly quoted Hitler, and has deep ties to violent groups like the Proud Boys, wrote Amy Spitalnik, CEO of Jewish Council for Public Affairs. In 2023, Indiana Moms for Liberty chapter chair Paige Miller quoted Hitler on the cover of the group's monthly newsletter, The Parent Brigade, in a chilling preview of Trump's efforts at the Department of Education today. Right, before I mention that quote, I've seen so many people who want to pretend that they actually care about people, but then they have no problems, like, oh, I'm not racist, I just don't think black people amount to much. Which is what you're saying when you say that we should have a merit-based system, and then accuse anyone who isn't white or male as being a token higher. I mean, no, you're basically being racist, sexist, ableist, whatever else I'm missing. Because if you actually had any empathy and actually thought about anything for more than 2 seconds, you would know that it's not just white men who can do shit. And actually, there are plenty of white men who can't do shit. So, there is that. But anyway, let's get to the quote that Moms for Liberty thought was perfectly A-okay to use in their newsletter. He alone who owns the youth gains the future. The newsletter's cover read, citing the Nazi leader. Now just think about it. Even if this wasn't a Hitler quote, just the thought that your viewpoint isn't let's teach children facts and let them make their own decisions. Let's manipulate kids so they will do what we want in the future. Just think about that and think how messed up that is. That's basically saying that we know that we don't have facts on our side. We know we don't have reality on our side. But if we can convince enough people to think like us, well, then we're just going to make the people that we don't like, make their lives miserable, and maybe they'll just kill themselves and just go away. That's just so messed up. Moms for Liberty's Justice defended Miller, declaring, I stand with that mom. Okay, so you're outing yourself as a Nazi. That's really sweet of you. I mean, it's always so nice when people out themselves as Nazis so people know who the fuck to stay away from. That's very considerate of them. The DOE's website launch follows a growing number of investigations undertaken by multiple departments targeting DEI and noncompliance with Trump's gender ideology order. So basically, there aren't enough people in the world who are as cruel as we are, and so we're going to force them to be cruel. And we're going to be cruel to them until they show the same cruelty to the people we don't like. The DOE's Office of Civil Rights is investigating California and Minnesota schools. Maine is also the subject of a probe by the same office and the Department of Agriculture, receiving a threatening letter from the Attorney General Pam Bondi at the Department of Justice. Okay. Do you see a pattern here? California is mostly a blue state. Minnesota is a blue state. Maine is a blue state. Well, maybe a purple state, but still. Plenty of blue in Maine. Interesting how those are the targets. I mean, that's basically giving the game away. Because, I mean, the Republican Party has gotten to the point where if you show a lick of empathy, you do not belong to the Republican Party anymore. And, I mean, if you just pretend to show empathy, but actually then out yourself as actually not really, then you're fine. But, all right. And, after receiving a threatening letter from Pam Bondi, these are the same people who scream how Biden weaponized the DOJ because he allowed them to investigate his son, or that he kept the Republican special counsel that was investigating his son in place or something. I have absolutely... Oh, I know, because, oh my God, the DOJ was investigating a criminal for doing crimes. Oh, because that criminal was Trump, and obviously, we can't have the DOJ investigating Trump. I mean, Trump is beyond reproach. He never did a wrong thing his entire life. He's always been a perfect little angel. Another DOE probe targets San Jose State University, the University of Pennsylvania, and the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association, or MIAA, for separate incidents involving trans athletes competing on women's or girls' sports team under Biden-era rules. And I've spoken about this many, many times. It's very complicated. Now, if you accept that there are some inherent advantages for going through male puberty, and that those girls shouldn't be allowed to compete in girls' sports, there's an argument to be had. I think there's a study on the NIH website that mentions that there are inherent advantages. That is a matter of discussion. I don't know how much of an advantage and in what sports that gives you. I didn't read the study, but like I said, there's an argument to be had there. But what about the girls who never went through male puberty? I mean, granted, these same assholes are trying to prevent puberty blockers because let's make a catch-22. It's okay if you never went through male puberty, but we're going to force you to go through male puberty. I mean, how messed up is that? to say, oh, yes, we don't want you in sports because of biology, but we're going to force you to go through the very thing that makes us wary of you to begin with. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Anyway, let's see if there's anything else I wanted to mention about this article. And of course, probably a lot of these executive orders are illegal, but the reason I'm not harping on all the all the lawsuits that are being filed against the Trump administration is because I'm not so sure Trump is interested in following laws at all anymore. I mean, even if the court says, yeah, don't do this, I don't think he would stop. So there's really no point in pointing out that the courts have said something if Trump isn't going to listen. But anyway, before I go, let us take a look at the Project 2025 tracker. So we have 42 horribles in progress. But the reason I'm bringing this up, we're still at 36%, but that's still bad, is that since I last did the tracker, one more objective was completed. And that is out of the USAGM, or the U.S. Agency for Global Media. So things like Voice of America, I don't know if Democracy Watch is one of them. I know that there's another one. But anyway, dismantle USAGM's journalism firewall to align to reporting with the aims of the president. Okay, now this is way too small print for me to read. All right. Now, let me just, before I mention the note, just think about this for a moment. Journalists and the free press, the point of them is so they can tell you the truth about what's happening in the world, not push some political ideology completely detached from reality. That is the point. That is the point of a free press, is to not tell people what they want to hear, but what is actually happening in the world. So because of that, you wouldn't want a president to force their media to report what they want you to. You know, that's why we don't like RT in Russia or CCTV in China, because they only report what the leader says they should report. That's why in China, like these Chinese apps like TikTok or Red Note or whatever else people were flocking to get away because of the threat of the ban of TikTok. You will not find anything about Tiananmen Square. Actually, when there was that move to that other app, I think it's called Red Note. Because if you went there, people were singing the praises of China. Now, obviously, it's not like China's one big hellhole. There's nothing good about China. But if you look at the user agreement, it basically says you have to align your views with the Communist Party of China. I mean, yeah, there's certain things you're not going to be able to say, like, mentioning that Tiananmen Square happened. You couldn't talk about that on TikTok or this new Red Note. You can't, because the Chinese government will not let you. Even if you were to make a video, that could possibly be considered a violation of their terms, and they might ban you. So, you could see how that could be problematic. Same thing here, dismantling the firewall to align reporting with the aims of the president, like, I don't know, saying some bullshit about about drag queens or trans people or whomever else the president wants you to attack. It could be racial minorities. I mean, it could be so many people that journalists are going to be forced to print or say absolute bullshit that they know is bullshit because they don't want to have the ire of the president directed at them. But anyway, let's get to the note. Journalists are facing HR investigations for comments critical of Trump. So, I mean, just think about that. No journalist in the U.S. is allowed to say anything critical of Trump. Now, the global media, they still can, and they have. But, U.S. media, oh yeah, we're going to go after journalists. CBS is actually thinking of settling that bullshit lawsuit about 60 Minutes simply because they have a merger they're trying to complete, and they're afraid that the FCC will turn it down because, they're petty little pricks. Anyway, VOA journalist was put on leave. So it's singular, so at this point just one, VOA being Voice of America. I mean, that's just chilling. Because expats exist. They exist because, people take jobs overseas. I'll give you an example. You see that I love sports. I wear Packers, I wear Badgers, mostly those two. So I also follow the Badger teams, the Badger players once they graduate college, and for those who play pro. Now, the Badgers do not have a lot of people in the NBA. And people in the NBA who are actually starters and who are actually a big part of their teams. Most of them are either bench players, they play bench, or they are in the G League, and and you don't see any hope of them actually getting out of the G League. So, but there are those. But most of the players, and I would think most players on most teams, if they're going to play pro, they have to go overseas. So, now, granted, in this day and age, you don't have to just rely on Voice of America to learn about what's happening back home. There are plenty of options for you to learn about what's happening in the U.S. But once upon a time, that was it. You had to listen to Voice of America because you couldn't get anything else. I don't know. I know that there are plenty of countries that have a a news channel devoted to English speakers. So they go over not just the news that's happening in whichever country you're in, but also in the U.S. and around the world. So, but before then, you just had to rely on places like Voice of America. Could you imagine if all you got was propaganda and you were being told that this is what's happening? Now, granted, if you live outside of the country, you can quickly discern what's bullshit depending on what they're being what is being mentioned. But still, just the fact that there are people out there who will not be allowed to criticize Trump, not just in Voice of America, but in other outlets. I mean, hell, I mentioned before that the AP has been banned from the Oval Office events because they dare to actually acknowledge that the world exists and not everybody is going to be calling the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. And so they got punished for it because, God forbid, the rest of the world might actually not do everything that King Trump claims that they should do. So yeah, that is a problem. I mean, could you imagine? I'm pretty sure everybody has heard about the Oval Office meeting heard around the world with Zelensky, where Trump and Vance acted like schoolyard bullies on Zelensky. And Zelensky handled himself really, really well. Nobody pointed out that there was this one journalist from one of the right-wing rags who asked Zelensky about why he doesn't wear a suit. You're in the Oval Office. Why aren't you respecting it by wearing a suit? Before I continue, slight problem. When Winston Churchill came to the White House during World War II, he wasn't wearing a suit either. So there is no dress code for when you're in a war. And Zelensky is showing solidarity with his people by not wearing a suit. Which I'm sure, deep down he probably is thrilled about because he, who knows if he even likes wearing suits. So this is a good excuse not to wear one. But still, he's doing it for a reason. But what they didn't catch is Zelensky's response. He said, "Oh, maybe for this event or that event, I'll wear a suit like yours, or even a better suit." And nobody caught the slam. I mean, it was such a subtle slam. It was such a subtle shade. I mean, I guess people just assumed, oh, because English isn't his first language, let's not take him seriously. I'm taking him seriously. He totally slammed that journalist by claiming that, I could find a suit better than yours. I mean, I'm so shocked that the progressive media hasn't caught on to that yet. Because it was so beautiful that Zelensky slammed him. I mean, I'm sorry. Let's not get into a battle of wits with a comedian. You are not winning that one. The man has a law degree. He's a comedian. You are not winning this. You are not winning a battle of wits. Just because English is not his first language doesn't mean he's not going to slam you in English. You who are thinking yourself all high and mighty because you're wearing a suit, and I bet you can barely speak English, let alone another language. Which, learning another language is really hard. But I don't slam people for it. So, I don't slam people for not speaking another language, which, oh, by the way, speaking of that language, Trump signed an executive order saying that English is the official language of the US, which a lot of people might think, oh, what's wrong with that? Most people speak English. The problem is that the insidiousness of the Trump administration. How many times have you heard stories about people losing their absolute minds? And I actually told you this story about someone being held by ICE for daring to speak Spanish. And this happens a lot. Someone was speaking Navajo, and people lost their minds because, they just heard a foreign language and they assume shit. Like, go back to your country and speak your language. They're speaking Navajo, you dipshit. One of the native languages to the U.S. Anyway, so yeah, Zelensky, definitely a hero. He handled himself really, really well, and I really hope things work out for him. I really hope things work out for him, and that I've heard stories about how there are companies around the world who don't want to do business with the US. They don't want to they want to make it easier for people to boycott US products. There was a supermarket chain, I believe, in Denmark that is making it easier for people to know what is an American product so people can avoid buying said product. I've seen a company in Norway saying that they will no longer refuel U.S. naval vessels. So basically, for those who think that we can go it alone, we don't need the rest of the world. No, we do need the rest of the world. We can't piss off the whole world and just rely on Russia. That isn't how any of this works, because we live in a global economy and we are going to get our asses kicked. Because other people will step in and fill in the gap of whatever it is we provided. When it comes to whatever product that we're sending overseas, someone else can fill in, whether it be fuel, whether it be grain, whether it be whatever it is we export, there are other options. We are not the only game in town. There might still be some industries that we are the only game in town, and so the rest of the world wouldn't have a choice. But that's still going to cripple our economy. Our GDP is going to tank because people are going to be so pissed off with us that they are going to go out of their way not to give their money to us. And if enough people boycott certain products, the companies that have been paying for said products, they just won't buy them anymore because nobody will want them. Why buy them if it's just going to be money down the drain? So yeah, things are not looking up, and this is going to be a long couple of years before the midterms, and I can only hope that they haven't destroyed our elections to the point that Democrats can't win. Because if that happens, since these Republicans have shown that they have no spine and they will not stand up to Trump, I can we can just kiss the U.S. goodbye. We can just totally kiss the U.S. goodbye. It's just, we are just going to become a shell of our former selves. Anyway, I went off onto a tangent that I did not expect. But that is the latest on the Project 2025 tracker. So yeah, 297 objectives have been completed. I'm sorry, 297. There are 297 total objectives in Project 2025. 87 have been completed, or 36%, and 42 are in progress. So there's still plenty that haven't even been started yet. So there's still a lot of terribleness yet to come. So with that, I will see you guys in the next video.